Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and today I'm doing a review video, and I'm going to do a review of If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. I picked this book up a while back. I was sent it by the publisher and I picked it up to read because I was going to the Cheltenham Literature Festival and I was going to see Genki do a talk there, and I thought what perfect opportunity to hear him do his talk and then to read the book. It's quite a small book, it's about 200 pages long, so it's quite a short read, and if I'm honest, when it comes to translated Japanese fiction, I do find that these shorter books suit me better than the bigger sort of Murakami style books. I find that a lot of Japanese fiction that tends to get translated has a slight whimsical feel to it, and definitely deals more in the philosophical than it does in a fast-paced plot. And that is, I'm not talking about things like manga and stuff here, I'm talking purely about sort of a novel. And so I do find that in terms of reading that whimsical philosophical style of book, a shorter book is much better for me to keep my interest and to keep me thinking. I find the longer ones tend to lose me about halfway through. So I was quite hopeful about this book. I really liked the idea behind it. I'm not a big cat lover. Please don't put me a thumbs down just because I don't like cats. Yeah, I thought, well, it sounds like an interesting premise, and actually having gone to see Genki talk really added an extra layer of this reading experience for me. The main plot of this story is we have our main protagonist who has just been diagnosed with a brain tumour. He knows he's not going to live for very much longer. He doesn't know quite how long, but he's not going to live for much longer. And all of a sudden the devil shows up, and the devil says to him, I will let you have another day for everything in the world that you make disappear. So on day one, if he disappears something, then he gets another day to live. The little catch here is that the devil actually doesn't give our main protagonist complete ownership over what is getting erased and disappeared from the world. It is the devil who ends up ultimately deciding, and Genki has to agree for those things to then disappear. And throughout the book we're looking at various things disappearing, from clocks to mobile phones and to cats, which is one of the things. This whole book is written as if it is a letter to the protagonist's father, and it becomes apparent that there has been an estrangement there. So the story is set into chapters. Each of those chapters is named after a day of the week, and the title is whatever is being disappeared on that day. Now, the first thing that Genki told us about that in particular is that he has taken the book of Genesis and he has reversed it. So in the book of Genesis, God is meant to have created the earth in 6 days, with the 7th as a day of rest, and in terms of this book, our main protagonist is having to erase something every day, with the 7th day being this final day. So I really liked that parallel there. There was 3 reasons that Genki said he wrote this book. The first, which I thought was really interesting, was that he was in Tokyo and he had lost his mobile phone, and he wanted to go and ring his parents to let them know and to sort of touch base with them, and he couldn't remember their phone number. He couldn't remember, and it made him think how we've all transferred our memories onto mobile phones because we can't remember people's numbers anymore. It's all on the phone all the time. So he said he went to get a train to go back home, and sitting on the train he would normally be sitting on his mobile phone looking at things, looking at emails or Instagram or whatever, and he didn't have it, so he looked out the window. And as he was looking out the window, he saw the most amazing rainbow he'd ever seen. It was beautiful. It left him, you know, quite awe-inspired. He looked in the carriage to see if anybody else had seen this rainbow, and all he saw was people with their heads down looking into their phones and on their phones, and they had missed all of this. And it made him think of something that his mother had said to him before, that in order to gain something, you first have to lose something. And so that idea had always his like stayed with him, this losing something in order to gain something. So if he disappeared things, what would he gain? And that sort of stuck with him. The second idea is really why our main character has a brain tumour, and that is because when he was a teenager in high school, his 42-year-old uncle got a brain tumour, and he was called to his uncle before he died, and his uncle said to him, don't worry, it won't be long and you will forget me. I will be forgotten. And he didn't say this in a mean way. He was saying it to Genki to say, don't worry, it's okay, you won't remember me, you'll be fine. And Genki was quite angry at this, but at his age he didn't really have the vocabulary or the sort of way of rebutting that from his uncle, and so he spent the next 10 years trying to think of a way to do that. He said that death comes to us all, and he wanted to look at a way of exploring that and exploring someone's death and what that means to them. And he said, in a strange turn of fate, he's managed to keep his uncle's memory alive, because he talks about it in interviews now, and so he's proved his uncle wrong. His uncle is not forgotten, which I thought was really nice and quite interesting. And then the third thing that sort of brought this book about really was Genki, if you didn't know, is quite a prolific and well-respected Japanese filmmaker. He's recently just turned a well-known manga series into a film, and he looks at things from a very cinematic way often. And when he was approached to write a novel, the first thing he thought is, I want to write a book that you cannot turn into a film. That's the sort of book I want to write, one that isn't possible to make as a film. And so he thought of different ways of doing that. What he thought to himself was, if someone bought me this book as a filmmaker, I would, he wanted them to think, there's no way I could make this. But he wanted that contrast. He wanted a cinematic story, but one that was unfilmable. So apparently one of Genki's favourite hobbies is to imagine his own funeral. And he thinks to himself, if I was walking down the street and I died, and I was shipped back to Tokyo and there was a funeral and my friends would be gathered round, it's tradition for the friends to go out, have a drink and to talk about the person that's died. And he said he doesn't want to be looking over his this wake or this meeting of people talking about himself and hear that they say bad things about him. He wants to have no regrets, and he said if he died right now he would definitely have regrets. And that is something that he thinks very strongly about when he's talking about his main character. His main character has these regrets, and it's through these acts of disappearing certain things and the things that are then compelling him and moving him along to talk to certain people and to mull over the things in his life. He's trying to make sure that he is dying without any regrets. Ultimately, this novel is about a man approaching death, the things that he thinks about, the parts of his life that he goes over. And these disappearances of different things through the devil are just a catalyst in order for us, or in order for Genki to discuss with us these different concepts and ideas. I really think that, as I say, having gone and heard a Genki talk, that really added the enjoyment to this story for me. I think it would have quite happily sat at 3 stars, which, I would have quite enjoyed it, but I definitely feel that hearing him talk and having that background information into what he was trying to achieve really did help to bump it up to a 4 stars for me. I didn't have my mind blown, but I think I really struggle with Japanese literature in general in order to connect with it in the same way that I do with perhaps translated fiction from other countries. I think maybe it's a cultural thing. Japanese culture is so very, very different from our own that I do find it hard to connect and to empathise with our characters as much, because their thoughts and feelings and motivations seem very alien to me. And so I'm too busy thinking about that to actually be able to sort of understand sometimes their point of view. But I really enjoyed this, as I say, and I definitely recommend picking it up. It's a lovely little book. and it really does look into these themes of death and regrets and making amends and thinking about your life and where your life's been, and making sure that you do things because you want to, and that you don't leave anything behind that you wish you had resolved. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I definitely recommend it, and I hope that if you decide to pick it up now, perhaps these little insights I've given into the interview that I listened to of Genki at the Cheltenham Literature Festival this year may help your enjoyment of the book as well. Anyway, let me know if you have read it and what your thoughts were, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.